All right, here we are. So happy to be back. We had a couple week hiatus um, for my apprenticeship and Joanna's mentorship that we're sharing with everybody. And this week we're talking about the theme here is our mind chatter matters. So Joanna and I were just uh, having great deep discussion before we pushed record, and so we're just gonna step back and just start by saying, what exactly, when you said our mind chatter matters, what exactly do you mean by that?
Okay. Well, actually, what I'd like to do today is start off by just reading a little excerpt from my book. It's on page 104, and I have just a little blurb here. When I wrote my book, I gave it attention, but if I were rewriting this book now, I would definitely give this chapter a lot more attention. But that being said, let me just start off by reading you the opening part here. So, your mind chatter matters. You are whole. You are loved. You are valuable. You are special. You are not alone. Do you feel the truth of these words resonate in you, deep down in your core? Or are they just words that float right over you and don't resonate with you at all? These days, there is more and more evidence to support what holistic practitioners have been saying forever, that what you think affects how your body feels. How you talk to yourself plays an important role in how your body responds to all the things you do. Improving your food choices, making better lifestyle choices, and moving on a regular basis are all important and beneficial. But if you continue to speak to yourself in a negative way, then all these beneficial choices can be sabotaged. Negative mind chatter feeds your unfriendly bacteria, not the friendlies, and keeps you from thriving. Positive well-being actually plays a larger role in supporting regeneration in your body than food and movement. It's that important. Don't neglect this aspect. You can't thrive without working in this area too. And so, and then I go on to talk about how, positive, giving yourself having positive conversations with yourself and giving yourself positive feedback doesn't mean that you've got your head in the clouds and you're being unrealistic or anything. But it all comes down to how we are framing our experiences in the moment and what stories we are creating in our bodies within that framework. And so it's really important, as I said in the book here, the food choices that we make do play a huge role in our health. The lifestyle that we create for ourselves do play a huge role in our health and our vitality. And movement plays a huge role in our health and our vitality. But ultimately, we can be doing all of those things, but if we're not looking at this constant conversation that's going on between us, our brains, our body, and how we are experiencing everything around us, then those things are not going to have the same impact that you would hope they would. Or what I've seen happen a lot over the years in practice is that, something works, you change your diet and you experience all these great benefits, but then all of a sudden it's not working anymore. Or you're taking all these supplements and spending all this money working with all these, functional medicine doctors, naturopathic doctors, and all, whatever the list goes on, and you experience results in the moment, but then nothing lasts. And you're back to square one and you're like, what is going on? And so, these are the moments that are your, little wake up call, so to speak, from your body saying, hey, there's a whole element here that we've neglected in our approach to our healthcare. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this today, because the more and more we learn about the effects of what we think and how we feel and how we speak, not only to other people, but to ourselves, it's becoming just so obvious that it is the number one priority for vitality and for health. And that's really the bottom line. before we even jump into changing our foods and changing our lifestyle and making all these radical changes in our lives, which, yes, absolutely can support us. But if we don't start working with the mind first, then those things are not going to have the same beneficial impact. And, for all the time, energy, money, and whatever we're putting into those realms, it's a shame if we're not actually looking at the root of all of these things, and that's in holistic health. We talk about getting to the root cause of whatever somebody might be experiencing in the moment. And what I've come to learn over the years is, yes, there's physical, things that come into play with that. But what we need to look at is what was happening on a mental, emotional level at the same time and behind all these other parts of that experience. And so one thing I've been diving into more recently, because I find it quite fascinating, is German New Medicine. And it's not something that I'm really familiar with at all. And the little bits and pieces that I was kind of seeing, or, that were kind of coming at me, and telling me, hey, it's time you actually started looking into this, just really triggered that whole thought process and made it even more clear in so many ways. And I'm going to just try and give a little bit of a brief description here, but please don't necessarily quote me. And I encourage you to go do your own research. And there's one person that I absolutely love and follow on Instagram. She's on Facebook as well, too. And her name is Dr. Melissa Sell, Sell. Don't know if there's an S on the end of that or not. And that was where I first even heard about German New Medicine. And the idea and the premise behind it, and like I said, this is my interpretation right now, is that I'm going to use food allergies or food intolerances as an example here, because that's kind of what I was diving into a little bit. And, a lot of times and I've worked with, and Josiah can speak to this personally as well, too. When we started working with together, she was experiencing a lot of food intolerances and a lot of issues with food. And so primarily, we worked with nutrition, diet. We looked at kind of all the areas, but the big piece of the work that we did within that was what we were calling limbic rewiring. And that involved actually rewriting these stories. And in German New Medicine, they're called tracks that we lay down in the brain, connecting experiences with external things. So, for example, you were in the middle of having some sort of experience that was affecting your body, let's say not in a positive way, and you were eating a strawberry in that moment. So now that strawberry becomes connected to those emotions and those feelings and everything else that was happening in your body in that moment. And so potentially in the future, anytime you eat a strawberry, that taste, that smell, that flavor is going to trigger that track or that story that was laid down connected to that experience. And this happens whether we are conscious and aware of it or not. So, and that's why she runs something that she calls Awareness School, which I've only taken a little peek at, but it looks really fascinating. So I highly encourage anybody who's listening to this to check it out as well, too, and to learn more, because I am definitely not an expert. I'm just starting to look into this and realize that ultimately, this is what I've been working with and teaching all along, and learning more of the science behind it and learning a new language, basically, to put together with it as well, too. And of course, I just find it all so fascinating. And as Josiah and I were talking about earlier before we went live here, was that, as we begin to work on rewriting these stories, or tracks, as they are often referred to, a lot of things come up. And there's so many different tools that we can be using to address these different things that are happening to us, so that we can find a way to become more aware of what is happening in the background, and also going back and looking and figuring out where the potential for that original story came from so that we can neutralize and rewrite that story. Now, the important thing to keep in mind here is not only are we rewriting that story necessarily in our brain, but we are rewriting that story in our entire physical being. And that's where the epigenetics comes in, because we can actually change our epigenetics and we can influence our epigenetics. And we can do this in a way that supports us to thrive, or we can do this in a way that supports our body to begin to do things that send us very large communications trying to get our attention, or love notes, as I like to call it. It's the love language that's happening between, you and your body, basically. And so this is just like a different framework to be able to look at this communication and this language and these, things that we perceive that are happening to us, but actually really go back and dive deep into why. What are they connected to? What is the story? And the more tools that we have to be able to work with these different things, the better. And this is, why in my practice and in all my courses and everything that I share out into the world, I am trying to share as many resources and tools as possible, because what we often find is that we have a moment where we discover some tools and they're working really great to support us to move through whatever is happening in the moment. And we experience benefit from that. But then all of a sudden, when we move on to perhaps another layer, those tools are not having the same effect that they did originally. And so they might not be the right tools for the moment that we are experiencing in that time period. And so this is why we need to be open to all of these different things that are out there, as well as constantly really working to hone in and build our own, library of resources and tools. So we have that to fall back on at any given moment, because basically this is something, this work, shall we say, is something that is happening continuously and constantly. So we're constantly laying down these stories. And at this point, what I'm trying to call attention to is the fact that if we can become aware of what's happening, and this is what being present in the moment is about, right? If we are present in the moment of whatever is happening in our life, in that second, in that minute, then we know what all the elements are that were connected to that experience. And we can look at it and say, okay, this is not a track that or a story that I want to have permanently written into my body right now and into my brain. So what can I do to support that to be a more positive experience, so that I don't experience other ramifications from this in the future as well too? Am I making any sense?
You are making sense to me, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I wanted to just go back for a second with everything that you're saying. It feels like when we're talking about when we do, having these different tools and they work sometime, they work in this moment and then they stop working. I wanted to just touch on, it reminds me also of the biotics, the pre, post, and
Pre, pro, and post.
pre, pro, and post. Thank you. That it feels like the same thing. Like if we just do something one time, or throw some prebiotics in, it'll work and then it'll disintegrate. Like what we need to do is to build the community, give the food, to this mental and emotional aspect that you're speaking on, and then just to fall back on the actual bacterias and the biomes of the gut. It's the same sort of thing, that there are ways that we can feed and give the right food and fodder so that these things can continue. Because I know it can be really challenging if someone doesn't have a guide, Or if they're not familiar, they go, well, I tried that and then it didn't work, or it worked and then it stopped working. It's like, are you continuing to feed um, yourself on those various biomes, whether it's like, from the gut to, the emotion or the tracks and the stories. So I just wanted to kind of throw that aspect in as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, and that's a great, analogy with that as well too. And that's why we always hear about the gut brain connection, right? I mean, that's all over the internet these days, finally. And so more and more people are starting to understand. So there's so many layers and elements even to that gut brain connection, right? So there's the food element, but then there's what we're talking about today is the thoughts and the emotions and the feelings, because those all trigger nutritional responses in our body as well too. And so what kind of responses are we triggering? Or is it one that's actually going to feed the, how do I want to put this? Is it something that's actually going to feed our body's ability to be able to thrive? Or is it something that's going to create chaos and lead us to the point where our body has to start speaking to us in a little bit of a louder voice in order to be able to get our attention and call us back into the moment? And that's really what this is all about. When we experience physical symptoms, it's our body's love language trying to get our attention and calling us back into our bodies, into being present, into being aware, into being conscious. And I know I'm throwing all of these words out here and I'm using different ones, but they all ultimately mean the same thing, is that you and your body are one, and you're constantly present and aware to what is happening in your life, within yourself, and surrounding you at any given moment all the time. And ultimately, that in itself is where we really begin to thrive as a human species. And that's what this whole thing, our body's forming these, so-called symptoms as a way of communication. And I've said this before, it's not that the body is doing something wrong. It's actually doing the exact right thing in that moment and responding exactly as it's supposed to. And it's miraculous. And, the initial reaction of so many people is, oh my God, what's broken? What's gone horribly wrong? What have I done? And it's something that needs to be fixed like right away, instead of just taking a step back and going, oh, okay, I hear you. I hear you. I may not understand what you're trying to tell me in the moment, but I hear you. I'm listening. I'm present. Let's do this together.
I
And
think that those
just,
three
I was
things.
just going to, okay, go ahead. I was just going to say, by even just that sentence and changing that framework and that mindset, that's what opens up the door for us to really connect into that deep healing that is necessary and available within all of us. And that's why I always say, we are our own healers. Nobody heals anybody else. They are guides and guides and support to be able to lead us down that path of understanding what it is that is really within us and how to work with that. Sorry, Josiah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say the exact same thing, that those three sentences, those three sentences were just the abracadabra, really, of the key in, because it was like, for my own self personally, and I know for a lot of people, it's like, how do I hear myself? Or like, what am I listening to? Or what am I even going to do with that? Or how is that going to change it? Or it's like, when you just say, like, I'm listening, that really just like brings things down to me. If you just say to somebody, I'm listening, it's not a silent treatment, and it's not argumentative. It's like, you've gone, okay, I'm going to listen. And I've experienced through my own pain when I was sick, it was like you said, it's like, why is this happening? I want to get back to normal. What do I have to do? What did I do? What's going wrong? And none of that is listening. And there's just a level of like just putting down your sword, putting down your judgmental mind and saying, I'm listening. I don't know how to understand what you're saying right now, but I'm learning to commit to listening, not arguing and judging, and just listening. And, you know, and I'm here, like I'm here now. But the other thing I said, I'm not sure that you gave it to me or it came, was um let's see, I can't quite remember, but I'm here, I'm listening, I'm learning, to understand what I can do to make you better, to make everything feel better,
To support you.
to support you. And perhaps in return, you could just not yell so loudly. Like the symptoms could maybe not be so extreme because now you have my attention.
Right. And that is something that we were working on together.
Right.
Was establishing, that opening that line of communication, establishing the fact. And, a lot of times it takes a little while, as in your personal experience, for your body to actually trust you and believe what you're saying, because there's been no action behind those words before, right? Or there's not even been necessarily that expression before. And so the body, all it knows is that, we've ignored it up to this point and tried to override everything, or tried to stuff it down, or fix it with a pill, or, whatever in the moment. And so it doesn't have a background of trust. And so sometimes it takes a while to lay down that trust. And I can speak from personal experience, as well as your experience. And I see that with many of the women that I've worked with as well, too. We have been so disconnected from our bodies for so long that there's no trust for a lot of us. And trust takes time. It's a relationship that we need to build. And it's very interesting how when we work on that relationship within ourselves, it actually starts to reflect back out and starts to alter our relationships with other people, whether it be family members, coworkers, friends, or whatever, because we're starting to listen in a whole new way. I see, and even personally too, I can look back over the years, and whenever a friend would like come to me with something, I always felt like I had to give them something to try and fix in response, right? Which is very common. And that's how many of us are in the world still. We feel like if somebody shares something with us, it's like, oh, well, here's what you can do to fix that. But a lot of times that's not what's needed in the moment. What's needed in the moment is just that listening. That's it. No judgment, no trying to fix. And I was in a Wise Woman's Council circle for a while. And that was one of the most beautiful things that I so enjoyed and loved about this circle of women, was that we just got to show up and share whatever was going on with us in the moment, and just talk about whatever, and we often had, it was, we were guided on a very somatic experience to be able to, by our facilitator, to be able to work on certain things. But in that moment when we all just got to speak, nobody was trying to fix you, but everybody was listening and witnessing and hearing you. And sometimes just that in itself is the magic, and all we need to really start to, because sometimes we don't even know how to do that for ourselves. So if somebody else can mirror that for you, and we have that experience and that opportunity, then wow, that is really huge. And as I said, that really supports us to actually really deepen our connection, not only with ourselves, but with other people in our environment and in our worlds. And it can make a really huge difference for a lot of these relationships that really matter to us. And it really helps not only in personal relationships, but in business relationships as well, too, because it's very common in a business, relationship, whether you are partners in a business, you're collaborating with other people, you're somehow working in an office, or, whatever the environment is. Even a lot of us entrepreneurs who we call solopreneurs here, and we're in our own little world doing everything by ourselves, but we're still interacting with people on different levels and in different ways. And one thing I've really noticed is when I don't need to jump in and try and fix somebody or something, unless I'm personally asked, it really alters the depth of the conversations, the clarity, and the ability to be able to, hear what is necessary within that moment as well, too. And so hopefully all of you that are watching this with us or watching this later can see how this is all just, part and parcel. Like everything is just always cycling and circling within our lives constantly. So we have our own ecosystems that is cyclical. We have the ecosystems externally that are cyclical and always changing and shifting. And so being present and being aware to everything that is going on in these conversations that are happening, I feel is the number one most important and the key to really tapping into our ability to be able to understand ourselves from a much deeper perspective and really work with ourselves in conjunction as a partnership, as opposed to, kind of beating each other up in that way. And so I actually wanted to leave you with one exercise. Well, not really an exercise. I call it a meditation or whatever. And I'm just going to describe it here really quickly for you all. It's in my book on page 105. But one of the things that I like to share with all of my clients, and this is actually a tool that I share with everybody. And I like to call it just your, body check-in, body visualization, meditation, whatever you want to call it. But it works like this, and it can be done first thing in the morning. Actually, this can be done any time of the day, but I like to either start the day and or end the day with this, because it's a good way to kind of set the tone for how you're going to move through the day, as well as just closing out that day and closing out the energy for the day before you move into the next one. And so what it entails is just taking a few minutes, sitting comfortably, lying down comfortably, whatever works for you. You can even do this. I've done this standing in a room full of people. Once you've practiced it a few times, and you get used to it, then it's a tool that you can utilize pretty much anywhere in any environment, really. And you just want to kind of close your eyes, whether physically or just kind of like zone out on whatever is around you in the moment, and just get really present in your body. And if even in that act of itself, if that creates a certain amount of anxiety for you, then just pick one thing and kind of like just focus in like on your hand or something like that, and just start looking at your hand and just noticing the patterns on your hand, what's going on with your cuticles, and just kind of, and that'll help bring the mind back into awareness, but without triggering necessarily the anxiety that might be associated with that. And so whatever you are using to come back into place, whether it's breath work or whatever, you just want to start by, and I like to start at the top of the head, and you just kind of want to do a scan. And so you're basically just checking in. You're like scanning through. It's like, okay, how does my brain feel right now? How do my eyes feel right now? How does my head feel right now? What are my ears doing? A lot of times we don't even really connect in with our ears, but they're one of our major sensory tools that we have. And there's a lot happening, and there's a lot that triggers sound just for our nervous systems. So just kind of checking in, even just like, what's going on with the ears? Do they feel inflamed? Do they feel moist? Do they feel dry? Just check in. Our mouth, how does it feel? Does our tongue feel swollen? Do our throats feel scratchy? Is our jaw feel like it's in alignment? Is our bite closing properly? Or is there tension? You know, we often hold tension in our throats and in our jaws as well too. So just noticing that, and you're not trying to fix anything here, you're just noticing. Keep moving down through the body, arms, shoulders, neck, back, um, all out through their chest, down through the back, down into the legs, and then eventually working your way all the way down through the feet. And like I said, you're not trying to fix anything in the moment. All you're doing is checking in and noticing, is there tension anywhere? Is there inflammation that you can feel somewhere? Is there pain that you can feel somewhere? Is there a weird twitch going on somewhere there? Like, just whatever is happening in your body. And in the beginning, you might not really notice a whole lot. But once you begin to like use this practice more and more, and your body begins to trust you, then you might start to notice more and more things. And then by the time you get all the way to your feet and to the end of the body, what you want to do at that point is think about what came up for you in that. Like, what were you noticing? So say, for example, you noticed there was some tension in the back of your neck or in your jaw. So that would be a good time to say, okay, jaw, or dear jaw, however you want to say it, dear neck, I noticed that you were experiencing some tension in that space. And I just want you to know that I love you and that it's okay to relax and let that go. And I will support you in doing that. And that's it. And then end the whole practice, whether you've noticed anything or not, you want to end the whole practice by telling yourself that you love yourself. So just say, dear body, thank you so much for supporting me through this life the way that you do, and for being the miracle that you are. And I'm so grateful that we get to do this human experience together. And I'm sending you so much love as we move through the rest of this day, or as we move into our sleep. May it be restful so that we can awake refreshed and vital to come into the day tomorrow and face this beautiful world and these experiences that we get to create. And so I'd like to leave you all with that. And, it may sound a little weird at first if you've never done anything like this before, but I challenge you to just try it. Do it consecutively, at least once a day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, and see how you feel. So that's your challenge. And I'd love to hear your feedback if you do this challenge and you accept it.
Yeah, that's so great. I hope that some people do take on that challenge. I will definitely start to do it in the evening. I think it's a really, really great one. And I wanted to just end by saying, you sort of answered my question with this body check-in and body visualization. I think this is a really good practical tip, and maybe next week we can talk more about some other, I think this is a really good tool in the toolkit to use. And I think I noticed that there's many people who are, in a place of like really interested in like hormone balancing or energy balancing or food allergy balancing. And maybe we could go into bigger details about some more practical tips, including this amazing visualization that can help them as they're in this kind of, I think, acute state of, panic or
Fear.
pain, fear,
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. And the first thing that came to mind was Louise Hay.
Oh,
I use her work a lot. She has 2 excellent resources, but one that is excellent is, it's a little, I don't have it right now because I've loaned it out, but it's a little tiny book, very small. You should be able to find it pretty much anywhere. And it's Louise Hay's, I think it's called, I don't want to give the wrong title. So you know what? I'll share it next week because I'll go and look up the book. So I make sure I share the correct one. But it's basically a little tiny booklet that she has written, and it lists, all of these physical symptoms and struggles that we may be having. And then it shows what it's often the thoughts and the emotions that are connected to it, underlying that. And then it gives you a couple of positive affirmations to work with. And so I'd like to actually bring that into the conversation next time, because that has been such a valuable tool. And one of the key things here is too, yeah, there's a ton of tools out there that we can pay for, but there's also a ton of tools out there that don't cost us anything and that we can begin to practice and utilize immediately. And so I think it's a really good and smart way to approach, our healthcare, by having an assortment of all of these tools, but those free ones that you can use in any moment and in given situation in any given time, I feel are the ones that are saving grace and are often the ones that can save us in a critical moment. So,
Yeah, definitely. So, well, we can end today by just saying, definitely try the visualization. It's a great tool. And next week, we'll talk about more of these affirmations from Louise Hayes and some other just practical tips to continue to. I think what I just want to end with saying is that there's so many ways to approach ourselves and to see ourselves. And I would I would like to say that there's many ways to see ourselves and to connect in. And so if you just think of like, well, I'm just a person and things happen and this is what it is, that's one way. But like, what if you say, hi, body, I'm listening to you. Oh, kidney, I'm feeling you there. Or, hello, attention, that which is the awareness, like the I, the awareness, the me, the ego, the body, the organ. There's actually many ways that we can just kind of start to see ourselves and then talk to ourselves. I just want to encourage that we're not just one thing, because I think sometimes it can be hard for someone to talk to themselves or listen to themselves. Who is it that I'm listening to, or what am I connecting to?
right.
So to just explore, like you said, like, hello, foot, and it sounds funny at first, but the reality is your foot is there and it's been walking you around since the day you were born, if you have a foot. And if it ever had pain, that's real too. And awareness is real. So it's like there's ways to get past what might seem silly or what might seem unattainable. There are just some truths, which is we have awareness, we have body, and we have attention.
Mhm.
And so I think that's what I want to end with.
Perfect. Yeah, I was like, okay, well, we can go off on this direction and then this direction and then
I
this.
know it's endless, but I just want to like put that out there for, I think for some people, even doing a body scan could be difficult, or like, how do I even do that, or have a resistance? But
Yeah.
it's like, just
Well,
get
and if that
real,
feels
like,
weird too, and you can't, just the idea of talking to the whole body feels like not something that you can even do or start with, then like I said, just pick something. Our hands are something that we use on a regular basis all the time. What do your hands look like? How do you take care of them?
right.
How do they feel? How do they support you? Are they trying to send you a message?
Yeah, the great questions.
And that's really what it boils down to too, is listening.
Yep.
And then asking questions to expand upon the listening.
Yeah.
And it feels I will admit, I was like, this is so hokey when I first was introduced to all of this like 30 years ago. And I was just like, yeah, I don't think so. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to talk to myself. So I get it if that's your reaction right now as well too. And I just want to encourage you to be open.
Yeah. Yeah.
Check it out. No, I mean, you can't hurt. There's no harm possible here in this type of communication. And so try it, see what happens.
Absolutely. Okay, well, thank you so much, Joanna, for every single week. And I'm looking forward to next week. And as always, oh, it looks like we have comments that I never saw.
Oh, is there a question that I should answer?
No, it's just validating all of the experience, acknowledging call and response. I think she was responding to what we were talking about. I'm so sorry I didn't see that, Lisa, until later.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's the call and the response, right? So it's this constant dialogue that's
Yeah,
going on.
right.
That is exactly what we were talking about. Like I said, whether you're conscious and aware of it or not, it's happening.
Right.
And so being able to tap into that is opening the door for, another level of intimacy with ourselves. And that opens up the door for vitality.
Yes, definitely. Thank you. Thank you. And
Thanks,
until,
Josiah.
until next week. All
Yeah,
right.
can't wait. See you all then. Bye bye.